What's up, my juice lovers? Welcome to the Cold Pressed Truth. This is Charlie Wetlaufer. So this is the first time I'm doing a video intro to the podcast. I'm going to start doing this from now on so that the intro is not only on the audio version. So I went down to San Diego a couple weeks ago and to visit Ryne at the headquarters of Solti. You may recognize Ryne and the building, by the way, because I did a episode of Behind the Juice, which was a limited series, kind of a documentary behind the scenes series I did that's live on YouTube on the Good Nature YouTube channel, so you can check that out. Before I get into this, a couple quick things I want to discuss. First of all, some very exciting news. You may have seen the announcement earlier this week. Good Nature announced our new M1 cold press, which is the smallest press we've ever made. It's built specifically for made-to-order juice. That's why there's the M in the M1 is for made-to-order. It's the first cold press, the first juice press ever built specifically for making juice on demand. And the reason it's capable of doing that is, number one, the size. It's very compact. Number two, the new innovation in the machine is that the entire grinder can swap out between recipes. So you don't actually have to clean the machine at all. Even if you go from like beet juice to green juice, you can just swap out the parts really quick. We call that the ready grind technology. And number three is the price. List price $3,900. If you are based in the U.S. and you buy during the pre-sale between September 23rd and September 30th, you get a $500 discount. And we are looking to ship the first units in March of 2020. The second thing I want to discuss is JuiceCon. JuiceCon's coming right up. So if you've been thinking about going and you want to come, definitely go online and buy tickets today. There is a chance we could sell out again as we did last year. Bunch of awesome speakers, awesome networking events. You can have plenty of time to pick the brains of some super experienced people in the juicing world and just meet new friends. JuiceCon is a great place to meet new friends and people with similar values. So I hope to see you there. I'll be there, throughout the weekend if you want to come up and introduce yourself. I always look forward to meeting passionate juicepreneurs like myself. And please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give this video a thumbs up if you want to see more educational juicing content like this. What's up, Ryan?
What's up, Charlie?
All right, we are live on the Juice Business Podcast. I don't know what episode this is. I'll have to figure that out later. I think it's 6, maybe.
Episode 369.
Yeah.
369.
What's that?
That's harmony, balance, and letting go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
Hindu, basically yoga and Sanskrit in Hindu.
Nice.
Yeah. They talk a lot about those sacred numbers.
So we've known each other for a while now, since 2014 maybe?
I think before.
Was it?
Maybe early 2014, huh?
Yeah, probably late 2013, early 2014.
Yeah.
You came to visit me in Las Vegas when you had an office there.
Yeah.
Made some juice together.
Yeah.
I invested a small amount of money in your company at the time, which was basically you and an X1, right?
Yep, me and an X1. I used X1.
Nice. And yeah, we got to talking. You explained to me your kind of vision for having like a organic glass bottle juice, which nobody's really doing at the time.
Right.
Companies like Suja were really picking up speed. I think that was right before they got that crazy valuation and got the big half acquisition, right?
Yeah.
So the juice industry is really booming.
Yeah, 2013 was a huge year for them. And so when we started in 2014, we looked at them because they were inspirational of their growth through Whole Foods.
Yeah. Yeah, but you were the first one I ever heard discuss UV processing.
Yeah.
Outside of like the cider industry or whatever.
Right.
So I thought it was pretty cool that you'd be able to minimally process it and bottle it in glass. Looking back at it now, I realize I probably shouldn't have been investing in juice companies because almost all my net worth is tied up in juice industry with
Right.
Good Nature, which is why I don't invest in anymore. You're the only beverage company I've invested in.
Right.
Probably the only one I ever will, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I've also learned about how tough the industry is.
Very,
Like,
very tough.
yeah.
I was naive to the difficulty of the industry myself.
Yeah. Yeah, so you started the company and then yeah, I don't know, just kind of walk us through the brief history of Solti.
Yeah. So, the idea came along in probably 2012 when I was traveling a lot. I was in enterprise technology sales. And when I was traveling, I noticed that personal obsession and then my health started getting better when I ate and drank organic products. And so my cognitive function increased. I felt better. And so everywhere I was traveling around these airports, I was looking for organic beverages and hopefully they were minimally processed. And then icing on the cake was bottled in glass. They were hard to find. Odwalla and Naked was on the shelf. There were no real regional players on the shelf, not even Suja in airports. They were basically in Whole Foods.
Yeah,
And
and Odwalla and Naked are both heat pasteurized,
right,
hot filled, right? Probably.
right. Yeah, hot filled.
Mostly purees,
Right. High sugar,
high sugar, probably
dead.
they probably add enzymes to like liquefy everything and get like maximum yield and stuff. And
Maybe add back flavor packs.
yeah,
A lot of the times also, people don't think about it before the processing part of the manufacturing process is where the ingredients come from and are they frozen? And so most of those companies use frozen ingredients and then they slack them down and then
Okay.
they go through. So
So even those companies like making smoothies are using frozen ingredients?
yeah,
I didn't even know that.
yeah, especially products that are not available all year long. So
Right.
seasonal fruits and vegetables.
For sure.
Those are made in bulk in second and third world countries most of the time on the farm to get the advantage of the labor rates from second and third world countries.
Right.
Then they're flash frozen. Then they're shipped over. And then they're
And they can
thawed
just pull
out.
from them anytime they need them just
Exactly.
to make the next batch. Yeah.
Exactly. I didn't really know that until I got in the industry
Yeah.
because it's hard to put those pieces together when you're just a consumer.
Especially kind of the lack of transparency on labeling. First of
Yeah.
all, processing wasn't even a thing people talked about until recently. I think
Mhm.
like even labeling like UV, what do you say, UV filtered?
UV light filtered.
Like the fact that you're putting that on the label, in general, processing hasn't been used on labels. Some companies choose to put pasteurized on the label because they want the mothers buying it to know that it's safe for their kids and stuff, but that's not even a regulation. Like you don't have to list pasteurized, UV, HPP, anything.
Right.
So as a consumer, I find it very confusing shopping that processing doesn't have to be labeled at all.
Right.
Even processing aids, like they're adding stuff to the beverage that they consider processing aid. It doesn't have to go on the ingredient list either.
Right.
So
So you have to be a very discerning consumer to understand those things.
yeah,
And there are leading edge and bleeding edge consumers that understand those things, but it's not the mass market yet.
for sure. Yeah.
But it seems like faster and faster, more people are becoming aware of how things are processed.
Yeah, and I personally think that's one thing we should push for in the beverage industry in general, and maybe the entire food and beverage industry
Mm-hmm.
is starting to talk about the processing more
For
on
sure.
labels. Like we have a right to know nutritional information now, which is great in the U.S. We can look at a package and read the calories and everything, but there's still no information about how everything was actually made.
Yeah, I mean, even on the food side, if you think about baked versus fried
Mhm.
versus dehydrated, which is basically, cooked versus highly processed versus raw, like those things are now starting to come out on food and food packaging, which I think is a beautiful thing.
Right. Yeah.
And that's great. But most of the time, if you bought something off the shelf, even if you thought it was sort of fresh, it may have a 2-year shelf life.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a great thing that we're starting to label these things more as a marketing thing, as a marketing plan, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if regulation will follow, but I'm glad that there's companies out there that are transparent on the way they process food.
I feel like regulation will follow because the trend is always labeling for marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And then when enough people start doing it, then there's a push to regulate it because people start to abuse it.
Mm.
People are labeling everything organic.
Yeah.
And then when it started to be like kind of a mass marketing
Right.
thing, then they had to regulate it and say, well, what does organic actually mean?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now there's this big push for kind of small batch stuff too. Like Solti now, you don't consider Solti a juice company now, right?
No.
Yeah. What do you consider it?
Organic beverage company. Eventually it'll just be an organic company or just a company but I think that there's more a conscious company, right? I mean, there's a lot of companies out there that are beyond companies. They're kind of pushing for social good, not pushing for social good for marketing purposes to then increase their sales, but actually are pushing for social good as an ethos within the company. I think that's great. I also think there are a lot of companies that are capitalizing on the marketing of a social enterprise, which I think is a bunch of BS, and I tend to be vocal about. But yeah, we're an organic beverage company. We stopped calling ourselves a juice company in 2016, actually, just because we saw that juice was a road that could lead to a dead end, and we didn't want to be stuck in a corner. And plus, we started making other products like the Superade line, and this is a low sugar functional lemonade with superfoods added, and that's not a 100% juice product. So we weren't making 100% juice products in 2017. We had a line called the Classic line, which we made until middle 2017, end of 2017. I think Q4, beginning of Q4, we kind of slowed it down. And at that point in time, we made a conscious decision, like the consumer's asking for these types of products, so we can't just be a juice company.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your line a little bit here. So Superade, what's a Superade?
A Superade is a low sugar functional lemonade with superfoods added.
Okay.
So basically this has all less than 7 grams of sugar, call it, and they have the added benefits of superfoods. So you're getting the nutrients and the aliveness of the superfoods, but it's low sugar, and we use water in these, but we use reverse osmosis water. So the total dissolved solids of the water's down. It's not hard water. Doesn't have chlorine or fluoride in it. Super important. So basically, it's a hydrating beverage that's refreshing.
And then it looks like you sweeten it with maple syrup.
Yeah, organic maple syrup has been our mainstay for a sweetener. It's got more trace minerals than any other sweetener, any other plant-based sweetener. So like agave has a higher glycemic index, so bumps up your blood sugar and doesn't have as many minerals. Honey's great, but a lot of people don't eat honey because of hardcore veganism. I like honey personally, but I know a lot of people that detest it and they won't buy a product because of that. Maple syrup seems to be the most received sweetener with the highest mineral content, low glycemic index. We like maple syrup.
How do you feel about cane sugar?
I think cane juice fresh is amazing.
Yeah.
I actually, dude, we just did our first harvest of cane sugar.
I think I saw one of your Instagram videos. You made some cane juice.
It's crazy how good it is. And when you have cane juice fresh, it's kind of like rooty.
Yeah.
It's sweet, but it's not overly sweet. And you can taste the root aspect of it.
It's very like woody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was fun. And we add lime to it. So in general, I think cane juice is good. I think the whole thing comes down to like all this processing. When you take cane juice, then you freeze it, then you send it to a place to have it boiled down to make cane sugar. Then you got, concentrated, then you're adding powder to a product. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just doesn't jibe with me.
I was talking to a friend recently. I asked him why he uses agave he adds agave to a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And versus regular sugar. And he said, well, agave is plant-based. I was like, well, so is sugar.
Right.
So I don't think he really knew why he was using it, but like agave.
If I were to rate the sugars that I would ingest on an unbiased level, which I try to actually make products, we try to make products from an unbiased perspective. We just want to have the best quality we can possibly put out. And that's number one, actually. Flavor and quality and nutrients are all high, but the number one thing when we're R&Ding a product is how can we make it the highest quality? How can we make it the lowest cost doesn't even cross our mind. We figure out the metrics like after. But if I were to, rate the sugars personally, I would probably go with maple syrup first, close with honey.
Mm-hmm.
Honey is pretty amazing.
Yeah, honey's great.
I mean, the Egyptians had honey back in the day, and these tombs have been found and pyramids have been found with honey that is still good. So I mean, it lasts forever.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty incredible. Honey and maple syrup right there. Then I would probably go agave, and then something like cane
Mm-hmm.
sugar, and then standard white sugar, which is derived from beets most of the time, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so you're living down in Costa Rica mostly, right?
Yeah. I'm.
Well, I guess I should mention we're here in San Diego.
We're
I
here in
came to
San
see
Diego.
you for this
Yeah.
podcast, which is why we're in this beautiful office with the awesome orange wall behind us. Yeah, so we're down in San Diego, and you're up here for a little while doing some work.
Right.
You kind of go in between, right? Between
Right.
here and Costa Rica.
Yep. Yeah, and my schedule's fairly fluid. I'm here 3 or 4 times a year for 2 weeks to a month. I'm in Costa Rica kind of as my home base. I guess I would call primary residency down there.
I saw you doing some naked yoga on your porch down there. I
For
think.
sure. For sure. I like it. I like being connected to community, but I also like private and tranquility in like my day-to-day life because my business life is pretty busy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I still work 60 hours a week, like without fail.
Mm-hmm.
I work 6 days a week. I take Sunday off most of the time, but so when I'm not working, I like a real tranquil environment, and
Mhm.
Costa Rica has provided me that. I've been
Yeah.
blessed.
Yeah, I mean, my personal observation, it seems like you've been going through kind of a transition over the last few years. Like, I know it started, even when I met you, I think when I first met you, you were eating mostly plant-based, but not 100% plant-based. You still got to restaurants and eat, like, cooked food and stuff. And I don't think you were totally well, I don't think you were eating meat at all at that point. But I think at one point you said you were going to eat bacon grown on a farm, but then you decided not to.
Right. Yeah.
It was like a big deal. You're like, I decided I'm going to eat a piece of bacon, but it was growing in this farm that I know, and it's responsibly raised, right? And
Right.
everything.
It was Brendan's probably. Brendan
Oh,
McKeon's.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then you decided against it, and now it seems like you transitioned. Are you only eating raw foods now?
Only raw living foods.
So how long has that been your thing?
I got that question a lot lately, so I went back on a calendar with Lindsay,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's about 3.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I didn't realize it was that long.
I didn't either. It's been flying by. Like
Mhm.
2016, all 2017 was raw, all 2018, all this year. So sometime in 2016.
Nice.
Yeah.
Um,
But not limiting also. In my experience, a lot of people go on like a raw living foods diet, and they have a lot of difficulty because they go extreme. They go like fruitarian, or they do no oils or no salts or limited fats or a lot of fats. They're like on one end of the spectrum or the other. I don't limit myself at all. I've like really been listening to my body, and I'll eat as many nuts as I want, as many seeds as I want. I'll have olive oil. I'll have Himalayan salt. I'll have big salads. I'll have wraps. I'll have coconuts. I'll have a ton of fruit. Like I'm not, if it's alive, I'm good with it, basically. Right. And also, I don't shame myself for eating a lot or a little. Like really kind of let go of the emotional we have a lot of emotional attachments to food, so I've like stopped shaming myself. This was probably 2 years ago. I stopped that, and yeah, it's
so
just a big difference.
What kinds of things historically would you shame yourself for eating? Just like eating too much or something?
Eating too much, or like eating late at night, like eating past 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, like whatever it was. I would like feel guilty about it. I actually don't do it anymore, but not because I'm like disciplining myself.
Right.
It's just because like now I just feel like I'm kind of in the flow and eating kind of with circadian rhythms more. But it's not a discipline thing. But I used to be like, be mildly upset with myself if I ate late at night. Not overly upset with myself. I know a lot of people that like hate themselves for doing that, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember I used to party when I was 18 to 22 pretty hard. And like when I went and partied with my friends the next day, I'd be like, shit, I wish I wouldn't have done that. And a lot of people actually treat their diet like that.
Right.
They have that same like hatred towards themselves about that diet. So I've kind of eased up on myself, but also evolved into, feeling great all the time too.
There's this guy on Instagram. I think he calls himself the Unfastening. You familiar?
No.
He used to be a medical doctor to help people with weight loss, but then he realized, he started to notice he was kind of teaching people to kind of think poorly about food and eating in general. Like people, like you're saying, very shameful about eating and everything. So now he's kind of transitioned into helping people become comfortable with eating food and not shaming themselves about it, and then kind of transitioning that into better eating.
Yeah.
You might be interested in his stuff. He's out of the UK, I think.
What's his name?
I think he's the Unfattening.
Interesting.
On Instagram. Yeah.
There's a book called The Psychology of Eating. And it's like that. It talks about the shaming part, and there's also another one called the Slow Down Diet. I like that one. It's about being more mindful of what you're eating and like actually appreciating it.
Right.
Like not praying, right? Not praying over the food, but having true gratitude. Like gratefulness for this beautiful abundance in front of me. Where did it come from? And living on a farm definitely helps that connection, because you're like, wow, this green was picked this nut and seed and was. So, I mean, having like slowing down and having gratitude for that meal and knowing that it came from the earth and is connected to the earth. I like that.
The emotional part is huge for me. I know. So I gave up dairy recently. It's a step I've made about a month ago. And now I haven't been the person as an adult that like drinks glasses of milk or anything, but I would have a little cream in my coffee in the morning.
Right.
Cook stuff with butter.
Right.
I would eat cheese occasionally and salads and stuff.
That's the hardest one.
Yeah.
Cheeses.
So for me, cheese was easy for me to stop just because I wasn't eating a lot of it anyway. And I don't know, things taste fine without it. The hardest thing for me has been the coffee in the morning.
The creamer.
Because it's a very emotional, the smell and like
I know.
The taste, and cream is kind of sweet,
Yeah,
so it makes the
for
coffee.
sure.
So that
I used to do cream and coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that for me emotionally has been difficult, especially in the morning, because it's kind of like a ritual,
Right.
Make the coffee, a little cream.
Right.
But it's been fine. I'm starting to get used to black coffee and
right. You were into tea for a while, weren't you? Didn't you get into tea for a little while?
I still drink tea. I did get into tea instead of coffee for a while, but then I went back to coffee.
What kind of tea? What kind of tea were you into?
I like loose leaf green Chinese tea.
High end stuff, or were you buying it at a store? Or did you have to source it online, like and seek it out?
I would usually buy it at a legit like Chinese market. Because I spent time in China for a while when I was in my 20s, and then so I kind of got accustomed to it.
Right.
I would go to the tea houses and gamble with all the Chinese guys.
Yeah.
And lose a ton of money playing these crazy games like Mahjong, the tile game.
Okay.
And they play this 3-person card game called Dodie Zhu, which translates to beat the landlord. And it was a 2-on-1 game where 2 people were the peasants and 1 was the landlord. And the 2 people would try to team up and beat the other one. And the stakes, it would start off like, say you're playing for like $1.
Yeah.
You could throw down certain combinations of cards and double the stakes within the game. So as soon as you realize you're going to win, you start doubling. It's like this crazy strategy game. And I'd sit there and drink these big, they have these big glass mugs, like big beer mugs. They just throw the leaves right in the tea. And they steep it like multiple times, they keep filling the water.
Sweet.
So that was pretty cool. And so I still drink tea, especially when I'm eating Asian food.
Yeah.
Just like,
Yeah. I mean, I like all of that for food and beverage. I like the tradition and the connection and the culture around the food and the beverage, especially when the farmer is connected to it, and then that's very close to the person consuming it. So like tea, for instance, like if you go to hardcore tea farmers and source the highest quality tea, like that is sacred. It's such a cool thing. And it's such a connection from the farmer to the land. And then that energy is passed into the tea. And then the people that are like sifting the tea and drying the tea are also putting an energy into that. And then it goes into the consumer's cup. I like that on a small scale. When it's on a mass scale, it then gets bastardized. Same with coffee, right? On a small scale, really cool. On a big scale, with all these big corporations and all their buying power, gets bastardized. And then it gets put on the shelf on aisle 7. And there's 100 pounds of the special coffee. Or I should say 1,000 pounds in one store of the special coffee. And then all of a sudden the consumers lost their connection to it.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because once you geek out about coffee a little bit, you start to learn that beans are only good for like probably a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
You know, after being roasted.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you're buying the stuff that might be 6 months old when you buy it.
Right.
And then it might sit in your shelf for another month or something. But.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing what the packaged food and processed food industry has done to our food supply.
I know.
That we grew up with. And so we were kind of conditioned to thinking this is normal.
Which is crazy because it's only been around for like 85 years or something.
Right.
The first processed food was candy-coated M&Ms, I think, World War II.
Interesting.
Yeah. So when melt in the soldier's pocket.
Melt in your mouth, not in your hand.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then
trademark.
Coca-Cola used the government to help them expand internationally.
Right.
The government literally built factories for Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
That's how they expanded.
Right.
Because the soldiers needed Coca-Cola.
Right.
I guess. So.
For sure. It was an upper.
Yeah. And then our friend Katie Raquel, I don't know if you know her, but she owns a little company called Katie's Cold Press in Monterey.
I don't know her.
So it's just a little local cold press juice company. They use an X1. She sells at farmers markets and has a little retail store. She opened a little juice bar in the Navy base up there. And they had a big ribbon cutting ceremony, and the general came down and shook her hand, and all the soldiers were super stoked to have healthy food on base because the food they eat is all processed. And then within a week they got an order from above to shut it down because there's even stricter laws about raw juice in the military than...
Of course.
Yeah, of course.
It'll wake up the soldiers.
Yeah.
You can't wake the soldiers up. You must keep them under control.
And think about how much power Coca-Cola has, with the military and stuff. Of course, they don't want raw juice being consumed.
Of course. That would cleanse them.
Yeah. So they had to shut it down. And it's
I mean, I have respect for military to some degree. My family has a military background. My brother was an Apache pilot in the U.S. Army for 10 years and an Apache pilot trainer, pretty high up.
Yeah.
Uncle was in. But at the same time, soldiers take orders, and what societies want is a controlled population, a population that's not that curious. They can be easily controlled, and when you put juice and cleanse people, then they can't be as easily controlled. So it makes sense that governments and school systems and hospitals and pharma and all these things do not want healthy products to awake people, because the biggest threat to the system, whether that be any of those systems I mentioned, is awake and aware, conscious human beings that can make their own decisions and be independent from the system if they want. Because if they can't get the energy from the human being, then the human being isn't that is worthless to the system. So that's scary, because if enough people do that, then they can disconnect from the system and run independently.
Man, yeah, it is crazy. I mean, especially the institutions like hospitals and schools.
Yeah.
I have a friend I used to train with when I was fighting, and he was a semi-professional fighter, but then he stopped training to go work in hospitals and actually make some money, because fighters don't make any money unless you're the best.
Right.
And he gained a ton of weight. As soon as he went to work at the hospital, he just started packing on pounds. And he kind of opened up to me. He's like, man, if you could like somehow get juice machines into hospitals, I mean, all the food
Yeah,
we
no
have to
way.
eat there is total crap. It's all those sandwiches that come in the plastic like
Yeah.
little containers and
Like
stuff.
and croissants in plastic with
American
like ham and
cheese.
cheese on it.
Yeah, which American cheese was just like oils and coloring and stuff. And
I mean,
like,
it's ridiculous.
and they're feeding that in hospitals.
Well, because the hospital has a profit motive. It has no motive
Yeah.
to help people.
And then you know what happens when you walk by a hospital? You see all the nurses outside smoking cigarettes.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And the doctors have a high abuse of drugs.
Yeah. Yeah, they do like basically do meth to stay awake and like operate on people.
I mean, my friend was selling high-end medical devices, and he would go to Miami, Florida with all the top doctors, and he would tell me that the doctors were the highest users of drugs out of anyone in the
Yeah.
group.
Scary.
Yeah.
Um,
Stay away. I haven't been to a doctor in 10 years.
I rarely go to the doctor. The only time I'll go is if I legitimately like think I have something wrong, just to have them check it out. But that was like, no, you're fine. You know, but just like some weird skin rash or something, or like, but I don't know.
Well, I mean,
And-
there's a lot of psychology around doctors and people of authority telling us
I know.
what's wrong or right with us. And when they say that and they're coming from a place of authority, then that can change our own perception.
Oh my God. I mean, you go to the dentist, you're like laying in a chair. They've got a light over you and they're sitting there in like a white coat
Yeah.
telling you like, you need to like, you know, drill your teeth and do all this stuff. And
Right.
like I had some bad experience with dentists when I moved, when I was in Vegas. Telling me I needed to get all this stuff done and everything, and then got a second opinion, and then it was different. But also, oh yeah, you definitely need a root canal. And then finally going to a dentist was like, I mean, you have a deep cavity. You don't need a root canal. Like if you're my friend, I'd tell you not to get one.
Right.
I'm like, what the hell? You know?
Yeah.
And it's like, but they're set up, you know, a lot of dentists are set up. They've got this expensive equipment they're paying leases on.
For sure.
They try to talk into like getting your gums lasered.
For sure. They told people that fluoride was good for them for 50 years.
And they still do it.
Yeah.
Like I had to tell my dentist not to use fluoride on my teeth. Otherwise it was the default.
Right.
You know?
There's actually been a resurgence of like natural dentists that know the difference and like have gone to, you know, no fluoride and removing metal fillings for mercury and heavy metal contamination.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then the pharmaceutical companies, I'm kind of ranting here, but I was just reading this book called The Unsavory Truth by this woman, Marion Nestle, who is not related to the Nestle company. And her whole thing is she basically researches big food and beverage influence on like false science and stuff. It's really cool. If you want a new book to read, it's really neat. But and they basically took lessons from pharmaceutical industry, because pharmaceuticals have done all these studies on like, if you show up to a doctor's office and you give them stuff as little as pens and notebooks, the 80% of the time the prescription rate goes up for the drug.
Yeah.
And doctors don't even know that they're doing it because of this like influence, you know. And they'll swear they're not. And that's also why pharmaceuticals are paying the most out of any industry for lobbying and like throwing these big meetings for doctors where they get them all drunk and like put them up in nice hotels and stuff. And now big beverage is basically doing the same stuff and like funding kind of false research and you know, giving gifts to researchers and like
Well, beyond the research thing, on the sales side, at least we can use the same tactics as they do. And we do. When we go out with our sales team to grocery stores and major accounts and chains and give them swag and a Patagonia organic shirt with a little tasteful embroidery and bamboo pens and a cork journal and a glass insulated water bottle, like, you know, that influences and the sales do go up. So it makes sense. I mean, that you give energy and attention and that changes what happens inside the location. So it can be used for good or bad. But they definitely exploit it to the maximum.
The problem is, though, they're the ones doing it and not the produce industry or like the cold pressed juice industry. You know what I mean? It's
they don't have enough money.
I know, that's the thing.
You got to have a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I mean, like Coca-Cola and PepsiCo and Nestle and all these companies, they can go.
Enormous associations and like.
And the dollar stretches so far, Charlie, in second and third world countries. It's fucking crazy what they do to second and third world countries. Because say the average labor rate in a second or third world country is $1 or $1.50 an hour. And maybe the average in the U.S. is 10 or 12 or 15. Basically, you're getting like 10x your labor in a second or third world country.
Sure.
So you make your X amount of billions in net income in the U.S. on your P&L for the year, and you take that money into a second or third world country, billboards, door-to-door sales, taking over of little convenience stores, putting it on every street corner. It's very easy because it's inexpensive, and they have the cash flow from the operations. So it's sad, but it's crazy.
Yeah. So what do you think the honest beverage industry, companies like Solti and say even little raw juice companies, what do you think we can do to influence the public into learning more about what they're putting in their bodies?
Yeah, I mean,
for one thing, putting information on the label is very helpful.
For sure.
Because people are reading this. Salty beverages are alive. Unlike pasteurized drinks that may kill your vibe, Salty's never pasteurized, while other healthy drinks are bastardized. Raw, vegan, and organic. A clean beverage, so you never have to panic. That's clever. I like that one. No, what was that? Erythritol?
Right.
Agave nor citric acid. These dirty filler ingredients make you need antacid. Perishable, keep refrigerated, not 9 months shelf life, disgustingly outdated. We don't mean to be so crass, but please remember, best in glass. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a playful thing because we notice a lot of beverages that are trying to put themselves in glass, they're pasteurizing and they're adding a bunch of filler ingredients to get 2-year shelf life and do the same thing that Coca-Cola does with a healthy beverage.
I think that's a problem, is that there's all this pressure to become like Coca-Cola. When you start to become a certain size beverage company,
right?
A lot of it is because they literally getting money from Coca-Cola and Pepsi.
For sure.
And what do they want to do? They want to distribute very high margin product.
Right.
That's basically water with a couple additives.
Right.
And it's all just marketing. They're basically just selling water.
Right.
If you look at any of the products on the shelf.
Yeah, I mean, and it's an industry that's fueled by transactions. So they want the investment transactions to occur, and then they want the acquisition transactions to occur,
exactly,
so that they can continue their dominance. So, what happens is these food and beverage companies that are small, I've been through the gamut on this, as far as going through different investors and control and things like this. They start out small with good intentions, and then they start to take on capital, and then they look up one day and they realize they're just about to lose control of the company. And then if they don't do something, they will lose control of the company. And if they have to do something or they'll lose control. And if they don't, the company will go under. So they got in between a rock and a hard place.
Is it because of like covenants in the agreement or something? Like you have to reach certain metrics? Or,
right. Yeah. When you're like naive to these operating agreements, that can get pretty intense. They're 100-page long legal docs.
70 pages. Like
if you're kind of naive to those and you don't understand what special consent is, or you don't understand what other types of handcuffs are, and you're getting a big check for the first time, you're excited about, you're going to basically sign on the dotted line, but those handcuffs can really come back to bite you.
And I think it's very tempting to just close your eyes and say, hope it all works out, and just sign. I've felt that before in business.
Right.
But a lot of times that can come back to hurt you because things don't always end up okay.
Right.
And then if you signed your whole company away because you were just hoping it would work out, you can get in a lot of trouble.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people are attracted to the beverage industry because they think they can make a lot of money. And that attracts, high intellectual talent, but may not have the best interests of keeping the company honest and pure. And so that's great that there's intellectual talent, but you can lose the soul of the company. I think there's very few food and beverage companies that still have a soul and also are growing and are a medium to large size business. There's probably a handful of them. The rest are on a transactional path to take on investment capital and sell. And the founders may or may not really give a shit, actually. They kind of just, maybe they just got into it because they wanted to make a lot of money and they thought it was sexy to have a beverage company.
I think so. I mean, if you go to BevNet Live, the conference BevNet does every year, you see a lot of that going on there.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, that's kind of the whole business model of that event, though. It's like bringing investors with founders and like pitching, like, this is why my company is going to be worth $1 billion.
Right.
And
they have the end goal in mind instead of the day to day.
Right.
I mean, this is really a marathon. Actually, life is a marathon, and there's no need to be in a rush. And as I gain more experience, I'm starting to realize that there's no rush.
Right.
And one thing, you have to satisfy shareholder needs, but at the other side, you need to satisfy consumer needs. And most of the time, consumer and shareholder needs are actually parallel. If you take care of the consumer, good things will happen to the company, and then shareholder value will increase. But I'm realizing that building a company to sell it, is not taking care of all the stakeholders necessarily. And sure, a liquidity event's nice, but sometimes those liquidity events actually are less than you expect because you cut corners on the day-to-day stuff. So
yeah, I mean, we're seeing, it's been in the news, Suja basically looking for someone to buy the other half of the company now because they're on the path to the acquisition with Coke, but then something happened and Coke backed out, and now it's like,
right,
who knows what's really going on behind the scenes, but it's not what they thought it was going to be
right,
a couple years later.
Right. I mean, back to your question of what do I think the beverage industry can do to help the people? I think for one, it's local juice for sure. I think it's local products for sure.
Small batch.
For sure. I drink it. Everywhere I go, Charlie, the first place I go is a juice bar with fresh juice.
Yeah.
I definitely drink Solti when it's around. I mean, we're in more and more locations now. And I definitely drink Solti if there's nothing else around. This is really just an alternative to the poison on the shelf. I look at it very black and white. There's a bunch of poison on the shelf, and this is not poisonous.
Right.
Like, so if I'm in
a
jam, I'm just going to drink the not poisonous stuff.
Yeah.
I know all this stuff's poisonous. Cola, soft drinks, sports drinks, most of the other functional healthy beverages in plastic bottle. All that's basically not good for us to ingest. This is good for us to ingest. But the small juice bars, I think, are the heroes. And, this was a small company at one point, and it's still a fairly small company, but getting to mid-size.
Still has the spirit of a small company.
Yeah.
You don't walk in here and feel like it's some tech startup with like, I don't know. It's hard to explain with the energy, of a lot of those beverage companies that are really on the like Series A, Series B, Series C, like
pins and needles all the time, actually.
Yeah.
It's like very tense, huh?
Right, yeah.
Because they have to hit the deadlines.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were there in 2017. It was very tense.
Yeah.
Everybody was trying to do things, and that causes like scrambling. It causes lack of focus because there's too many activities that are not well thought through. You're spending other people's money, so easy come, easy go. So
yeah,
I think
so let's
local juice bars. I'll tie it back in. The local juice bars, I think, should also focus on profitability, which just goes to independence, which just goes to freedom.
Right.
Like profitability, independence, and freedom will allow you to be creative and like evolve your juice bar or your business endeavor.
And
if you're propped up with VC money, you can't.
And not get totally tied to like one outcome. Like we saw it in the juice industry, like Juice Served Here, for example. It's like they raised like $10 million, opened up like 12 locations in LA.
Yeah.
All based on this like juice cleanse movement,
Yeah, right.
Their costs were super high. They had all these like leases, and then the juice cleanse trend kind of died.
Right.
And so did Juice Served Here. They kind of went down with the trend.
21 million, by the way.
Oh, was it?
21.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
Greg Alterman's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the original founder.
Yeah, right. And did you see they're relaunched?
I think so. I talked to him. I don't know when the date is, but
I think he's just they announced it publicly recently.
Right.
It looks like they're probably using a co-packer and just doing a bunch of different like. I think he even mentioned like sports drinks and coffees and stuff. So
Right.
I don't know. I guess there's some value there in their brand.
Right.
For sure.
But that's basically a beverage company looking to make some money.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's not necessarily a beverage company to help with your health.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Where's I going with this?
It's just fine for business endeavor.
Oh yeah. But if you're small, especially if you're not taking on big sums of, VC money or whatever, you can kind of outlast the trends and just kind of shift focus if you want without being totally committed to something and spending millions of dollars and getting from point A to point B. Good example of that company in Detroit called Drought Juice.
Oh yeah, I've heard of them.
So they
Glass bottled at one point anyway.
They still do that.
Uh-huh.
But they also just built a new factory where they're going to be doing some HPP stuff. But they started in 2014, early 2014, when the trend was really booming.
Right.
Didn't take on any investor cash.
Right.
Outlasted the whole peak juice and the crash and burn and everything.
Right.
And now they're able to slowly kind of expand.
Right.
And now it seems like there's actually a space for a high quality HPP brand to maybe re-enter the market.
Mm-hmm. On a regional basis.
Yeah, because the brands out there now, Suja, Evolution, have driven the prices and quality down so much that they basically killed off all the other brands. So I kind of feel like maybe a new brand entering at maybe $8 or $9 again might be something.
Yeah.
I'm not sure though.
I think short term.
Yeah.
But I don't think midterm or long term. Mm-hmm. I think petroleum-based single-use plastic is going to be shunned. I think in 10 years, it will not be on the shelves in America.
Yeah, so we were just talking in San Francisco now, they banned plastic water bottles in the airport, right?
Yeah, that's 4 million bottles a year of water that one San Francisco airport's not going to sell. It's 4 million.
It's insane.
So say they're selling it for $5 each.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 20 million bucks.
200, isn't it? Oh no, yeah.
20 million?
Yeah, 20 million.
20 million annually just in San Francisco airport. Just think if Dallas, Fort Worth, SeaTac, JFK, all these others
Chicago,
follow suit.
Yeah.
It's fucking game over for single-use plastic.
Plus all the pressure on the plastic straws recently.
For sure.
You basically don't see plastic straws
Plastic
anymore.
bags.
Yeah.
My prediction is people are going to actually be shunned if they come out of a grocery store with plastic in about 5 years.
And actually, so I'm new to California. I just moved to LA recently.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole no bags at the grocery store thing was new to me, like paying for bags.
Right.
And it has made me bring my own bags.
For sure.
It worked.
I
feel better about myself.
For sure.
Instead of even when I take paper bags home, I feel like it's a waste.
For sure.
I do try to save them and use them for recycling and stuff, but still, it caused me to change how I go to the grocery store.
Gave you some awareness on
Mm-hmm.
it. You put your effort and awareness into that.
So I actually think that's a good regulation.
Right. So, I mean, if government regulation gets on this, they ban straws, and now the airport is doing this autonomously without government regulation, but San Francisco also has some other government regulation on single-use water bottles, I think, in the city.
Okay.
So not multi-use, but I think single-use in downtown.
Mm.
So, I mean, if governments start getting on this, Charlie, you know how the dominoes can fall.
Mm-hmm.
If governments start banning this, it's not going to be pretty for the single-use plastic beverages. Mm-hmm. So I think regional players might have a mid to short term, or short to mid term, but I think none of them are going to have a long term, including Evolution, Oddwall, Naked, Suja, you name it,
Mm-hmm.
Blueprint. Sorry.
Yeah. I am seeing more glass on the shelf now.
Yeah.
Still not in juice products, obviously, but
kombucha.
Yeah.
Cold brew, water,
teas,
tea,
mm-hmm.
all that.
You go into Erewhon. I think Erewhon's a really good place to look at for
innovation.
Yeah, innovation.
And trends.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And
they're on the cutting edge.
They even have those giant glass water jugs
mm-hmm.
that you swap out. It's a $12 deposit.
For the 1
I love it.
one. Yeah.
And these guys come in with 4 of those and have $48 credit. It's insane.
Right.
But I mean, it makes sense. I mean, come on. You really need to be buying plastic water bottles.
Dude, we don't need to be buying and shipping any water.
Yeah.
What we need to do is figure out how to get water from our local sources that's clean and not riddled with chemicals and get that out of our local areas.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. Selling plastic water bottle or water in general is basically a sham, and one of the biggest, pull the wool over our eyes for the world. It's just ridiculous. There's water everywhere.
Especially like, man, you imagine them shipping the water overseas, coming
know.
from Fiji and stuff, like privatizing the water and shipping it.
We were talking about Puerto Rico. Yeah, when they had like the hurricane a couple years ago, like they left 20,000 pallets on the runway. I didn't even know this. I didn't even know what 20,000 pallets looks like because a container's only 20 pallets.
Is it?
So that's 1,000. I mean, not a
Whoa.
container. A semi truck is only 20 pallets.
Well, that's a container, right?
Yeah,
Full-size
so
container.
40-foot container's only 20 pallets. 21 if you stack a certain way. Dude, so that's 1,000 containers, a cargo ship dropped off of plastic water, and it's sitting there on the runway.
It's still there?
Yeah, it's still there. There's
Why?
Photos online because I don't know, they didn't use it all.
Okay, so it's not for the people because of the hurricane?
It was from the
Oh, I
not
see what you're
Dorian,
saying.
the Maria, the one from 2017.
Oh, okay.
And now it's all like fraying and the plastic. Like, you know how when they pack a 12-pack of plastic or 24-pack of plastic water bottles, they heat shrink wrap it?
Yeah.
That shit's fraying and going like all over the runway and into the landfills and oceans. So, I mean, shipping water across the world is ridiculous. It's a money game.
And then even recycling plastic bottles, like I read maybe 6 months ago, that China is pushing back on taking our recyclables.
Of course.
I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
We're shipping recyclables to China?
Yeah. Yeah. What we do in our recycle system is, by the way, 9% of bottles get recycled, plastic bottles. We take all the bottles and we put them to a recycle center. We crush them down and we cube them into pallets. We then load those pallets into a container, 20 per container. We ship them to China. We were selling them to China to reuse them. They have so much plastic, they said no more. So now we have no export of materials for this plastic. And now the recycle centers are like shutting down. You've read in the news, recycle centers are shutting down.
Yeah. So then that kind of dawned on me, like, okay, so how much carbon is it taking to ship these plastic bottles back to China for them to do whatever they do with them? And who knows what they're actually doing with them. Probably just burying them.
The solution is pretty simple. It's just local.
Yeah.
Just local, and try to use the same package if you can, glass. I mean, speaking of plastic, by the way, we're not perfect yet. This is our new wellness shot. It has an aluminum ROPP cap, and this has no plastic in the packaging. Even the label, we're working on a wax paper label, so there's no petroleum. It's glass bottled, but our RTDs still have this plastic cap. Well, our machine to fill this is like a $1.4 million machine. And to change the capper on it's about a $500,000 endeavor. So we are doing it in 2020. We already have the engineering done, but we have this plastic cap that we've used for the last few years. So, I mean, this is beyond like marketing things. I actually just wouldn't be able to live with myself knowing that I put out all these plastic bottles when I'm 90 or 100, or plastic caps. So we are putting together an effort with Surfrider Foundation. We know them well. We talk to them regularly, and we're going to clean up every single. We weighed out. We counted how many bottles we've sold since inception, since 2014, since Raw Yoga day one, right? And then we weighed. Each case of plastic caps is 950. We calculated exactly how many caps we've used and how much the weight is. And now we're going to pay to clean up that much ocean plastic. And this will be changing to aluminum, ROPP. And so, our slate will be clean. And I'm not really doing that for marketing purposes. Yes, we are going to market it, but it's the right thing to do. If we have some money, it's the right thing to do. For sure.
Yeah.
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 What do you want to do when you're 75 and you're swimming? Maybe you have the privilege of swimming in the Caribbean or the tropics when you're 75 and you see a sea turtle with a fucking plastic cap in their mouth. You're going to be pissed.
Yeah.
Who cares about all the money at that point?
Yeah. I mean, seeing those like collections of plastic in the ocean is pretty disturbing.
Yeah.
And them pulling it out of fishes and birds' stomachs and stuff.
Yeah, man. Because we're doing it to ourselves.
Right.
If we're doing it to our oceans and landfills, ultimately we're all connected. So we're just doing it to ourselves. So that's where like more awareness. You drink juice, you're going to become more aware. You increase your awareness level. You realize what you do to others and what you do to the planet, you do to yourself. So when we pollute the ocean, we're just doing that to ourselves. It goes into the fish. It goes into the microbiome of the fish. if people ingest the fish, it then goes into the people. We
Yeah.
eat microplastics. No good. We can do better, and it's time to do better. And the world is doing better. Actually, I think it's going the right direction now. 2 years ago, I didn't think that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely there's a pushback on the mass-produced, mass-distributed packaged goods.
Mm-hmm. You see grocery stores going plasticless in the produce department now.
Right. Yep.
Like getting rid of the plastic wrapped produce. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Wrapping produce in plastic is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's no need for that. You know?
My favorite photo I saw on Twitter was a peeled orange
Yeah.
in a sealed plastic container.
God, dude. God, the orange has a natural container.
It's like if only there was some way to protect the inside of this orange from,
from oxidizing. That
Crazy.
peel's not good enough.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah, I mean, it's to the point. I don't trust anything I buy off the shelf anymore.
Yeah.
Except for Solti and maybe a couple other
It's
brands where I actually know the founders.
few and far between.
Yeah.
I look up to like a couple brands, and I really like the smaller brands that are not necessarily. This is very hard business. This is a very difficult, capital intense, competitive. You got to do promo calendars. You got to figure out how to get on the shelf, distribution, cold chain, blah, blah, blah. So this is hard, but I really like the companies that are like doing dehydrated coconut tortillas,
Right.
or like artisanal kale chips, or like organic brownies that are in the refrigerated department at Erewhon that are like all organic. Yeah. Like that's sweet. I love that. I respect that.
I love Erewhon so much. Yeah. You go in there and a lot of times they'll have the founders there with their new brands of stuff, and some of these guys are so passionate.
Totally.
Just like.
Totally.
I wish I could remember the name of the brand. The name of the brand is the guy's name. He's this older guy, and he makes little raw kind of, those
bliss balls.
Yeah,
bliss balls. Yeah. Those are so good.
And I was just talking to him for a few minutes about how he sources his nuts and all this stuff, and he's just so hardcore with like.
I mean, we can transform the whole food system with companies like that everywhere. Mm-hmm. We can do it on the living beverage side, whether it's us or a kombucha or a fermented drink or whatever, or a cold brew or tea or whatever it is, right? And then you can do it on the food side with bliss balls and raw pizza and these collared wraps. I mean, it's not only delicious and like filling and satiating and satisfying, but also helps the local community. The produce is fresh. You got like 3-5 day shelf life, 10-day shelf life. Do it in a local area. Created a nice business. I love that.
Yeah. The problem is there's so much pressure
to be a billionaire.
Well, that, but also from like the government side, like cheap food for everyone, safe food for everyone. What they consider safe is just like dead processed
for
food,
sure. But by the way, if everyone were doing these artisanal things and we were growing more of our food, it would get less expensive. Mm-hmm. The reason why it's so expensive because there's so few of it. So there's not very much competition. The prices are high. It's very expensive to make because there's no competition, which really actually it's so expensive to make because there's not that much demand. Because then the supply's got to go up so we can get the price
Plus,
down.
like innovation in technology and stuff isn't really there because there's not a big market for it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let's go back a little bit. We started to touch on like raising money. Can you talk a bit about kind of starting in a shared kitchen and then upgrading to a factory and bring on investors, and then how the company's grown and maybe some of both the difficult and the good things that have come along with that?
Yeah. When we started, we were in a rental kitchen by the hour. We could only afford 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. shifts. So we made the juice at night, and then I put it in an ice chest in the morning at about 6 a.m. and I delivered it to a yoga studio, and then a yoga studio and a health food shop, and then a couple restaurants. So we deliver in the morning. I deliver personally in an ice chest in a car. I didn't even have a truck back then.
You had the little Beamer, right?
Yeah. I was just like fresh out of enterprise technology where I was suit and tie. So it was like...
I remember very clean cut Ryne,
very clean
shaved
cut,
face.
For sure.
You had like a nice haircut
for
all
sure.
the time.
Hair was always done.
No wispy mustache yet at that point, yeah.
Exactly. So I was delivering it in the morning, and then in the afternoon, I'd go knock on doors and sell into new accounts. And I basically did that Monday to Sunday, Monday to Sunday, Monday to Sunday, over and over and over for at least 18 months. I did not see any friends. I did not see any family. I went to maybe Christmas, and that's it. I didn't go out. I was purely focused on the business. I went all in. I put in 240 grand of money I had saved from age 15 to 25. I saved 240 grand by age 25.
Wow, really?
Yeah,
Insane. You were crushing it in tech sales, right?
I was.
Yeah.
I was high income, high earner, and it was all commission based, and I could get the job done. So I was high earner. I actually saved most of that money from there, but I was flipping some small assets before that too, vehicles mainly. So I was all in, except for I took 60 grand and I bought a farm in Costa Rica. I bought 6 acres, and that was my failback plan. And I had to do that for peace of mind because
This was what year you bought the land?
This is 2014, 2000.
Oh, you bought it way back then.
I bought it basically right when Solti started.
Okay.
Yeah, Shakti was the name of the company back then. And that was my legit fallback because I was like, there's a high probability I'm going to fail at this. And I don't want to be totally homeless and go back to a job. I could at least live on the land and eat some bananas and figure it out for a few years. I was single, young, could figure it out. So that was my legit plan. I went all in. Then I met you a few months later. I brought on some smaller investment checks. That definitely helped. We were losing money hand over fist because we were making 100% juice in a glass bottle, fresh. There was spoilage. The glass bottle we bought from Stand Pack at the time was literally like over $1 each. I was selling them for $7.20, which is a ridiculous wholesale price. And the stores are selling them for $9. Yeah, and the stores are doing me a favor. Mother's Market did me a favor.
I remember Mother's came on super early.
Yeah, 25% margin is what they made. They were very nice.
Wow, that's insane. That's like,
I know.
Yeah.
But I also guaranteed the sale, and it was basically on consignment because like if basically I just got the little shelf space and they were getting their revenue and there's no risk to them financially. So that's how it started in the beginning. And then I started finding people that could help with the activities that were not the best use of my time. So, for instance, after we started to get to like 5 or 7 accounts, I tried to figure out how I can get someone to deliver this stuff because me delivering it may not be a high priority use of my time. I'm better off selling it. So I need to go find someone to help me make it, and I need to find somebody to help me deliver it, and I can go sell the new accounts. And so that's what I basically did the whole time until today.
Mm-hmm.
I always try to surround myself with a team that can make it and deliver it, and then me and the sales team can do the finance and the sales side. And keep track of the financials is really important. So found a delivery guy. He actually worked at Mother's Market. Oh man, that guy was awesome. He had a little delivery truck. He then, from probably like 5 accounts to 40 or 50 accounts, he was our driver. He would pick it up from that commissary kitchen that I was renting by the hour. Then I went to another kitchen, and I started renting that one by the hour, but I locked in an entire month, and I got the night shift for the whole month. This was in Irvine, and this was about 1,000 square feet. And I could keep the equipment there and not have to move it, which was a really big deal because every night at the commissary, I had to break down all the equipment, move it, put it in storage. Like that was ridiculous amount of inefficiencies.
The X1, yeah, it's pretty intense.
So we had this 1,000 square foot place, and it was a vegan kitchen. These guys made burritos and stuff like that. They used it during the daytime, and we used it at nighttime. I started getting the equipment there. That's when we had our first UV machine. Actually, was in that kitchen. And
careful tapping because it's just like really.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
And then from that, went into a commercial kitchen that we finally got a lease by the month with a chip company, and we had 2,500 square feet of dedicated space, and so we could fit a small production line. We were hand filling everything.
That's a lot of space for a little juice company. Like, you can do a lot of production.
Yeah, it was good, but we were doing glass bottles, so we had a dishwasher to sterilize the glass bottles because we didn't have a bottling line. Mm-hmm. So like it was all hand. and storage was like amounting. I think we got into 100, 150, maybe 175 stores out of that place. And by that time, we had bought 1 or 2 trucks. The first truck we bought was like a $14,000 milk truck that I had to get a loan from Wells Fargo and like buy from this. It was like a 10-year-old milk truck with 250,000 miles. And then started delivering it out of that. Yeah. And now today is much different, of course. Yeah.
So then you brought on some bigger investors later.
In 2016, basically, 2017 a little bit.
What was that like for you and the company?
Super exciting at the time. Like when someone's going to write you a 7-figure check, it's super exciting.
Yeah, I remember that's when you moved into this space.
Yeah.
You basically gutted the back and built a new factory, and
Yeah.
you bought the $1.5 million aseptic filler.
Right.
And yeah, you bought a couple Good Nature X6s.
Right.
So that's what, $100,000 right there. And like the
Right.
whole like automated line.
Right.
We did a video together back then. The Behind the Juice.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
that was
2017.
fun. Was it 17? Yeah.
Yeah. I have to imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
This plant came online in February 2017.
Okay. Yeah. So it was right after that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was a very exciting time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you were say a regional beverage company,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of things would you consider before you took on like millions of dollars, and kind of how would you decide who you'd want to get that money from?
Well, I mean, when you don't have to take money, you're in the best position because you don't have to take it. You can be more choosy. When you have to take money, you're less. You can't be as choosy. You have to take the money. You have to take the money. There's always a time clock on it.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, since this company started until a couple months ago, there was always a ticking time bomb.
Right.
Always.
Yeah.
Like the ticker was happening when I was sleeping, when I woke up, when I went to sleep the next day. It's like you run out of money on this date at this time,
and
no
it
matter
was
what.
Pretty close a couple times. Yeah.
Oh, it was within 6 hours once, Charlie.
Really?
The front doors right over there
Yeah.
were locked, and everybody in the whole company was told that the company is shutting down. I had to hire them back. I mean, like we were within 6 hours of shutting the doors.
Wow.
And I wrote a check that day for like $60,000,
Mhm.
like all I had to get it back going. So yeah, be in a position where you don't have to do that. And how you do that is probably start small and bootstrap it and take your capital if you want it, your personal capital that you started with, and start it small and get it profitable. My two favorite words are EBITDA and cash flow positive.
Yeah, for sure.
So get it to EBITDA positive, and then
And let's explain EBITDA real quick, just in case.
earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
So it's basically profit if you don't consider like
Your interest to the bank
yeah,
and your depreciation of assets.
right, because that's not like a real thing. Like
It doesn't affect cash.
yeah, right, exactly. So your business doesn't change depending on depreciation, really.
Right.
It's just paper money.
It's what your assets get depreciated every month.
Mm-hmm.
So the value changes on the balance sheet. So yeah, become EBITDA positive and cash flow positive. I wish I would have known that a little earlier. I thought it was important, but what happens is the media portrays all of these sexy companies that are raising millions and millions of dollars, and they get pushed up on the media chart to number 1, and it's all we see. And they think that's more important than having a financially sustainable company. And so when you see that all the time, you're conditioned to think that that's the right thing to do. But the right thing to do is really to become financially sustainable through EBITDA and cash flow positive, generate your own cash. Then you can be in a much better position to raise financing.
And we saw that a lot in the juice industry. I mean, I think people in the industry were really confused that didn't understand this, that many of these companies were being fueled by investor money, just burning cash. Like,
Right.
Like you saw companies like Organic Avenue had a pretty good exit. Juice Served Here was growing quickly and was in the media all the time.
Right.
Blueprint, right?
Right.
Then there's like Hugo Fresh in Miami, and all these companies were growing. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of them kind of evaporated, and everyone's like, "What? I thought they were doing so well." It's like they were burning millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, really, they were burning hundreds of thousands of dollars a month.
yeah. They're basically paying you to buy their drinks.
Yeah, probably as much as $500,000 a month or more. And what I found is that growing top line revenue with investor capital is fairly easy, but
Right.
minding everything below top line is very difficult with investor money because you have to continuously fuel the top line.
Mm-hmm.
So what you do is you start paying for placements like that matcha bar thing that we just saw at Irwan, those facings.
Yeah.
You have to start paying for placements. You have to start demoing. You have to start doing promo. You have to start doing all this stuff to grow the top line, and it eats away at your gross margin. And then your operating expense on top of it is really high because you have to staff it all. So you have low gross margin and high operating expense, and you're just burning.
And because of the culture of growing the top line, you're not paying attention to the operational costs of the business, and everything's just ballooning and getting out of control. I mean, a perfect example, there's tons of companies now that are very questionable, like that have IPO'd recently or are planning on it. Like WeWork, I think, is a great example of that.
Yeah.
I mean, they're
burning money, big time.
A lot of money. And like I joined a WeWork in Toronto for a while. That's where my girlfriend's has a home, so I was spending a lot of time there. And I would go in. They would never check to see if you're actually a member. Just walk in, just work there. They had drinks and food and stuff. And I was like, man, I don't even have to be paying. It was like nobody even knows if I'm paying or not.
Right.
Then I was talking to my friend in New York. He's like, yeah, I just walk in all the time. I don't even pay. I just like, and I'm like, well, that's what happens when you're not like focused on actually making any money,
That's right. I mean, we went through a time like that in 2017 with investor pressure. And I mean, it's real. And then that happens. And then that becomes the culture. And it works for a select few, such as Amazon and Tesla. And
Tesla
others.
TBD.
Tesla TBD, but still, I think they had a cash flow positive and a EBITDA positive quarter or two.
But I mean, you look at Uber, that business doesn't even make sense to me.
Well, Tesla's going to wipe them out with that rideshare program, I think.
I think it depends on the timing of true autonomous vehicles.
Exactly.
Like, I think all these companies could be too early, honestly. Like, I think I'm a little more long-term view in the when we'll actually have autonomous cars
driving themselves.
Yeah, I just think there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be built before that can happen.
But UPS does have 100 trucks on the road that are fully autonomous right now,
doing very predictable routes, right?
Probably.
Yeah.
But that's good for I pay attention to that because that brings freight down.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it makes so much sense for companies that have the same routes every day.
Yeah.
That's pretty easy, I think.
Yeah. But like just plugging in an address and dealing with all the traffic and lane changes and intersections and all that.
I mean, if autonomous happens before Uber and Lyft run out of money, I think they'll do fine.
Right.
Because the marginal costs are really high and paying a driver for every ride.
Yeah. Did you see that keynote that Elon put on and he showed the cost of his rideshare with full autonomous versus?
No, I haven't seen that. Was that recent?
It's ridiculous.
Really?
It's like it's like dig the grave.
Oh.
If they can pull it off, because the cost per mile is like it's literally like less than 10% of the cost per mile for Uber. I think it was 6%.
Is it because it's autonomous?
Yeah, autonomous and electric.
Right.
It's a double whammy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if they can figure that out, that's obviously like
crazy.
But yeah, I mean, Uber lost $5 billion in the second quarter.
Interesting.
Which is crazy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're basically paying you to take their rides right now.
Yeah, I mean, in Wall Street, a lot of the time is just incentivized to get a deal done, a transaction done too.
Of course.
And so it also doesn't matter. And then if there's huge losses at the banks, that's covered by insurance.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times there's insurance policies for these huge losses.
Right.
So, I mean, it's really just funny money at that point in time, which I call Babylon bucks. And
yeah, let's talk about it. Because I heard you say that recently. What's the Babylon bucks thing?
Well, I mean, basically, the Federal Reserve can print the money and we can't. Mm-hmm. But we can't eat the money. The money has no value if we don't have belief in the money.
Right.
The collective people having belief in the money brings money value.
Yeah, it's just a story, really. We're just all agreeing to play
Right.
along with the story.
That these notes are of value.
Yeah.
But what's really valuable is nature
Mhm.
and natural resources and trees and clean oceans and these types of things. That's where humans flourish and thrive. So I call them Babylon bucks because it's a nice way to keep score, and you can figure out what's going on in a business. But at the same time, we have to look at the bigger picture and realize that nature is the queen and king both of the earth, and we need to take care of nature.
Mhm.
And if we're not living in tune or harmony with nature, and we're just in this Babylonian system, then we're not living to our full potential, and we're not going to be happy because we have basic needs, human needs that are much beyond simply going to work, earning a living, buying things, and then doing that vicious cycle over and over.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think it's a good way to keep score. It's fun to like try to increase your net worth and make investments that,
Mm-hmm.
gain value and everything. But it is strange that it's literally just this made up thing, these
Mm-hmm.
fiat money, it's just like,
It didn't become so real to me. Costa Rica has really changed my life a lot. It didn't become so real until I started living off of the land and understanding what it's like to be self-sufficient, truly self-sufficient. We harness all of our own water. We harness all of our own food, with the exception of some specialty items. I said earlier, we're probably at like 90%. All of our vegetables, we have organic greenhouse. All of our vegetables come from there. Most of our fruit, some exotic fruit isn't quite fruiting yet because the trees are young. But when I started living in nature and paying attention to the cycles, I started realizing, dude, if you come down to the farm, you got to come down to
I'm
the
coming.
farm.
I wanted to ask you about that. I would like to do a week there and live like the raw diet.
Yeah.
I think that'd be awesome. Like a little
For sure.
one person retreat.
For sure. You can, and stay in
Yeah.
the casita.
Awesome.
But when you start spending time in nature, you realize that if all this shit goes away tomorrow, you're okay.
Right.
But if you live in Babylon and all this shit goes away, you are not okay.
Right.
So that's when I started realizing I need to take my Babylon bucks and invest them into real assets. In real assets, I mean property and trees and things that produce more.
Clean water.
Clean water,
food. Yeah.
clean food, land, things that compost pile systems that regenerate the soil, tree systems that create seedlings and graftings that I can then. I have 100 durian trees right now in my nursery. That's worth like thousands and tens of thousands of dollars here in the US. It cost me nothing down there because I put a system in place to do it. So when you start living on the land, you realize all this other shit is kind of a distraction, Charlie. And it actually keeps us from knowing ourselves to a large degree.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. So I think permaculture and these systems is actually the future, and living in tune and harmony with nature. Maybe products like this are a gateway. I hope these provide a gateway for people to become healthier themselves, because really we have to become healthier ourselves. It all is internal and ourselves first. And then when we become healthier, we can become more helpful to others. But we can't become helpful to others without healing ourselves. And so I think, the food system is broken because a lot of people at the very top perhaps are not healthy themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I love you, man. I mean, you truly believe everything you're, marketing with your beverage brand and everything.
Yeah.
Which is, refreshing, because you meet a lot of, or I should say, I meet a lot of people in the industry. I will say now I meet more and more passionate people than not.
Yeah.
Especially, I do think there's a trend happening with like small batch juice companies.
Right.
But I still meet people in the beverage industry. For some reason, this industry attracts a lot of like really shady people that are fine with lying about what they're selling, and
Yeah.
just
Greed and the sexiness of growing the big company fast. It's just crazy.
and getting your name in the media for having a $500 million valuation because you just raised another 25 million.
Strokes the ego.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, really, there's been quite a few times that I've talked to Lindsay, and I've been like, you know the shit we went through in 2017 and 18 and 19.
Yeah.
Or 17 and 18. 19 we turned the corner. 18 was a lot of work because I had to go with our director of sales and go find all these national accounts and get the deals signed for shipping this year. That's why this year's been so fruitful. But there's been many times where I sat down at night, Charlie. I had put all my money into this company. You saw the email where I calculated how many hours I worked. I was working 80 hours a week, and somebody's like, "I work 100," and I told them, "You're a fucking idiot," because I'm working 80,
that.
and like I'm about to
Yeah.
go insane,
Yeah.
and you working and I'm healthy, dude. So the working 100 is stupid, and if people are working 100, they need to actually check themselves and realize
Well,
they're doing
I
themselves a
think
disservice.
Humans get addicted to many things. A lot of it is to distract themselves from something else that's going on.
Yeah,
I mean, you look at alcohol, drugs, video games, work, whatever it is. I think it's
yeah,
a pretty powerful thing, you know.
yeah.
Um,
These distractions
yeah,
from ourselves.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just so much easier to become obsessed with something instead of like try to fix shit that's wrong in your life or whatever.
yeah,
And I think work can easily become an addiction like that for some people.
yeah. Totally.
I mean, how many like executives that go to work in a suit every day have terrible home and family lives that just fall apart because
sure.
they're
For
like,
sure.
just ignoring everything at home.
Right. It's not balanced. I think
Mhm.
all the spokes in the wheel have to be balanced. Your health, your physical activity, outdoor time, family, business, inner work. The inner
Mhm.
work's the hardest because it's like the last thing people want to do because it's like the hardest.
Yeah.
Like even me, like I have a pretty good self practice, but at night sometimes I'd rather go on LinkedIn than
Right,
like
totally.
than go sit next to the candle without any distractions. Which I do have candlelight every single night, and I try to sit without any distractions, and that shit's hard.
Mhm.
It's really hard. I would rather be on LinkedIn a lot of the time
Yeah.
because my mind can be active.
Yeah. It is fun. The internet's fun.
Yeah, the internet's so fun.
Yeah. You can spend endless time on the internet.
Yeah. But we should think about how, as a society and industry, that we set up systems so that if the nice, fun things are not around, we're still having fun. And that's through natural systems, I think, permaculture, organic farming, regenerative agriculture, whatever you want to call it. And by the way, it doesn't have to be boring. Like we set our place up as an example that it doesn't have to be boring. We have a small soccer field. We have a spring-fed pool. We have slack lines. We have a dehydrator. We have a BMX track. We have like fun things because you have to have fun and it can't just be all farming, right? That's not that fun.
Mhm.
So we should think about how we can make systems like that everywhere, and that'll make us less dependent on the industrial food system.
You see a lot of people that are clearly so detached from being mindful of why they feel certain ways, right? I mean, you
Mhm.
just like see someone in the line at Starbucks that like flips out because they're out of whatever, like caramel
Right.
macchiato or something.
Right,
Like
right.
I saw this one lady like, "What? You're out of it? I had to lie to my boss to come here," and she stormed out. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. That's sad.
and she's yelling at the girl behind the counter like it's her fault,
Right.
because how dare you make me feel like this?
Right.
Um,
But a lot of people are just like one push away from like fucking
That's what I'm
losing
saying.
it.
Yeah,
Fucking losing the
exactly.
whole thing.
yeah,
That's not a good place to be.
yeah, totally.
That's mainly food decisions, man.
Mhm.
I think it's mainly what we put in our mouth and also our thoughts, of course, but mainly what we put in our mouth because that can actually change our thoughts. Because food is information.
Mhm.
It really is. It changes our DNA. Scientifically proven now. What we ingest in our body changes our DNA structure. So we're getting in these codes and information from food that changes how we feel. That can change our mental clarity and our thoughts.
Right.
I think it always goes back to food.
I agree, and I know for sure that when I tighten up my diet and just to eat super clean for a week or 2 weeks or whatever, I feel completely different.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a little scary because like I'm not used to feeling that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like you feel kind of elevated.
Mm-hmm.
Mentally I'm super sharp
Mhm.
and just like I can anticipate what people are going to say before they say it,
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of scares me a little bit. Sometimes I'll be like, man, I don't feel that grounded right now. I think I'm just used to walking around feeling slower and heavier because I'm not
Right.
just eating that clean most of the time,
Yeah, and when you're cleansing like that or doing a fast like that,
Yeah.
you will feel high and elevated and a little bit almost out of it
Right.
to some degree. And I found what happens is if you eat things that grow on the ground instead of fruits, like roots or greens, like lettuce greens or cabbage or something like that, that'll start to ground you down. Because I've done a lot of fasting, and when you get to certain points in your fast, you're like high basically.
Yeah,
You're
totally.
like really, really elevated. And in the afternoon or the evening when you want to slow down, I feel that eating the roots and the arugulas and the spinaches and the lettuces and maybe in a big salad with some fats, like that brings you back down. But if you don't have that, you'll just stay like 9 p.m., 10 p.m. wired, right?
Yeah. but then you look at like, I mean, when I say I don't eat clean, I'm not eating fast food and stuff, but I'm eating like, I eat meat still, and I eat cooked food and
Right.
whatever.
Right.
But
Restaurants,
yeah, restaurants, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and
which you don't have full control over. Yeah.
yeah, but then you see people that eat the total shit all the time,
Right.
like the fast food and the packaged processed foods and stuff. And
It's sad.
Yeah,
We're doing it to ourselves.
yeah, and I know what I feel like after, like, I ate Chick-fil-A recently.
Mm-hmm.
Just a chicken sandwich, and I felt like shit for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
For like half the day.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is just mental, just knowing that I just ate fast food.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
Reverse placebo.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It took me till the next day till I felt better.
Right.
But I couldn't imagine feeling like that all the time.
Right.
Like eating that every day for lunch.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that information gets absorbed by our colon and system and then goes into our blood, and then we have that information now in us.
Yeah.
If it's from another animal that's been slaughtered, like in a really hostile environment, like we're getting that information somehow or another. I didn't really think about it until I started not eating it as much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I would like to try. I'd like to come and visit you and do like a week of raw foods.
Yeah.
I feel like I respect vegan raw food, and I understand why I would feel better doing it, but it's still hard for me to really kind of make the decision to do that for any length of time.
Yeah.
Like it's easier for me to do a 7-day juice cleanse than do like raw foods for a week,
Right.
because it takes more planning and like
Right.
trying to
It's
figure
not
out-
available.
Mhm.
It's not readily available. That's a big challenge, right?
Yeah.
Like if you were at Erewhon with the raw foods bar every meal, it's available. Or if you're at Cafe Gratitude, they have a few raw dishes. Or if you're at Peace Pies, or if you're at, all these raw food places, there's like very few and far between. So if you have that available, it's great. But if you don't have that available, you're screwed, because you're going to go to Whole Foods, you're going to get some celery, and then you're going to get some hummus,
Right.
and you're going to get some tomatoes and an avocado, and you'll be like, what am I going to do with this?
Yeah.
But, it needs to be more available because it would be easier. And I think it needs to be gourmet-ish. It needs to be like tasty, right?
Yeah.
Or else it's not fun.
So I should say Solti has been doing a lot with CBD and hemp. Where is the industry now in general, like in CBD regulation in beverages?
Well, it's still being determined on a federal and state by state level. So what we've done basically is come out with some products with hemp seed oil, which has omega-3 and 6 nutritional benefits, but does not have CBD or THC in it, obviously. And so this is basically our placeholder for when regulation does let up. Then perhaps we'll have a hemp extract product or a CBD product on the shelf. But really, we want to make sure that we're abiding by regulations. So this hemp seed oil, which is basically the same as, Nutiva or or Manitoba Harvest or whatever kind of organic hemp seed oil you find next to olive oil, is a way for us to get on the shelf and start getting, a great product that stands on its own without CBD on the shelf, but then also be ready for when regulation changes.
Yeah, so the Farm Bill passed recently, but then so CBD federally is legal, but not in food and beverage yet, right?
Right. Yeah.
So what has to happen for it to be a legal ingredient?
FDA's got to vote on it
Mhm.
as being allowed in food and beverage, and then they're going to have to write a code around that.
Mhm.
And perhaps they say something like hemp extract is allowed if it's third party verified by a lab that it has less than X% of THC in
Right.
the finished product. But I mean, that's a pretty long process to go through FDA. So, I think it's a good idea to wait for them and listen to them, but at the same time, try to get something out there on a regional basis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is your, I mean, obviously you believe in CBD, but what's your personal feeling of CBD?
Man, I like cold pressed CBD or hemp oil with CBD in it, like personally.
So what does that mean, cold press CBD oil? Like, how's that made?
Man, there's only like 2 guys doing this, but they're taking the flour and they're pressing it at like under 140 degrees because you have to heat it up to get the oil out.
Right.
And so they heat it up somewhat, but not hot by any means, or not above boiling. And they press out the rosin, and then they mix that with hemp seed oil, which has no CBD or THC. And then you have like a true hemp oil. I think that's really respectful of the plant and gives you the most cannabinoids and benefits. I have some actually. There's a company called Apex. They've had some issues with shareholders and investment and all this as well. But the quality of their product is superb. It's a hemp oil with CBD, but it's like top shelf.
We get a lot of questions at Good Nature about pressing hemp.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you could make
A juice with it?
well, you could definitely make a juice with it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because it's just like pressing anything else.
Yeah, like spinach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But could you use one of our presses to actually get the oil out?
You'd have to heat up the plates.
Right.
But if you did temperature controlled plates, for sure. They have presses called rosin presses, which have temperature controlled.
Gotcha.
And dude, your presses would work great.
Interesting.
You put it in parchment paper. You put the flour in parchment paper. Then you press it with heated plates, and the rosin comes out. It's super sticky. And then you can mix that with hemp seed oil. And you can make a tincture.
Interesting.
I mean, that's how I use hemp or cannabis, and I'm not a heavy user, but I respect it and I like it. And I actually think that a balanced plant is even better if it has some THC and some CBD, but not a lot of THC and not a lot of CBD. It can't have one without the other. I mean, now cannabis goes back to the Himalayas. Its origin is the Himalayas, which was used as an herb for meditation and medicinal purposes. But what we've done with like the cannabis culture and the weed culture is we've bastardized the plant and we've hybridized the plant and we bred the plant for all this THC. So now there's like thousands of different names of cannabis strains like OG Kush and all this stuff.
Sour diesel.
All this stuff is hybridized and bred so that it has more THC. Now it's like 30-1 THC to CBD. Well, that's not really natural. So, and then the opposite spectrum is doing that for CBD and getting like a 30-1 CBD to THC. That's not really natural either. That's like messing with the genetics and getting the seed strains right. I think more of a balanced plant, 1-1, doesn't get you high as a kite, but you have some psychoactive and also has the medicinal properties, goes into the your blood system and works well. I think that's the best. And if you can do that in oil sublingually, I think that's the cleanest. I don't think smoking it is the best way to get it into the system.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think inhaling any smoke is probably good.
Yeah. Not necessary.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, it does seem like there's a lot of research and development going on in CBD beverages right now.
Yes.
Like I've heard like Coke and Pepsi and all the big guys are all dumping money into it, just waiting for that.
regulation
Yeah.
to ease up
Mm-hmm.
for sure. I mean, because it could legitimately displace pharmaceuticals to a large extent.
Which that scares me only because then I think pharmaceuticals will do everything they can to stop it.
Certainly. I mean,
Mhm.
they have the trademark on CBD, and so the epilepsy products are using CBD, and they don't want other people to use CBD, and that's one of the contentions within the FDA for food and beverage.
Wait, you mean the word CBD?
Yeah, the word CBD.
How are
Just
they
like
able to
organic,
copyright that? I mean, that
just like
seems
organic has the registration on
right.
organic. You can't use it without the organic certification agency giving you permission.
Oh man.
So that I believe it's a I don't know, epa something. It's an epilepsy CBD product. They're trying to make sure they can uphold that since their product got FDA approval to be a pharmaceutical. So where I see it going is CBD is going to go towards pharma, hemp extract is going to go towards food and beverage. Then there's going to be regulation around how that hemp can be used in food and
Mm,
beverage. But I don't think the term CBD is going to be on beverage in the long run.
wow.
Yeah.
So, but hemp extract could have CBD in it, right?
Certainly.
Yeah.
And all different cannabinoids. It could have CBD and CBG and CBN and all of this. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of IP, intellectual property, one thing I see a lot of small juice companies doing is not doing research when they name their companies and
Yeah.
when they're using, terms on their labels and stuff, and
Right.
also not protecting their IP once they do have some.
Right.
I know Solti does a good job with that.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Talk about some of your IP and what it looks like to protect it.
Yeah. I mean, for the smaller companies that are starting out and trying to get a name, that's really hard these days because almost every name is taken. So you got to do like an exercise where you do a database search
Yeah,
and figure out what's
especially
not
like
taken.
juice names. It's crazy.
Like all like a lot of if you do an exercise, a lot of them are taken by somebody. So it's delicate. But if you're trying to build a company for scale and a company that's going to be around for a long time, an iconic brand, then you want to have intellectual property. I mean, I'll give you an example. Um, I'm using this because I talked with my senior leadership team. We have 4 executives here that run the company, and I talked to them about intellectual property just this week. Coca-Cola's name is worth $70 billion.
Wow.
Their company is worth $235 billion. Their IP is worth 33% of their company, roughly.
Wow, that's insane.
More like 35% of the company. And that's worth more than any single hard asset on their balance sheet, Charlie.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that's worth more than all their single plants.
Right.
It's worth more than all of that. So it's very important if you're building an iconic beverage company or a CPG company that you have strong intellectual property. We have about 12 registered trademarks, I'd say, and 10 pending at any given time. And we're continuously innovating there. Solti is our registered trademark in all different forms, in plain text, logo, stylized, with the dash, without the dash. Another one we have, which we're pretty bullish on, is Superade, which we have defended. Other people are trying to figure out what to name a functional lemonade. Superade, we thought it was very fitting since it has superfoods in it.
Mm-hmm.
Gatorade also is a very powerful brand, and so is Powerade, and now
Right.
Healthade. So having Superade, we think, is pretty strong because we think this line will be out for a long, long time, have longevity.
Are you trying to get any trade dress protection on the bottle?
Yeah, the bottle is patented, both this
Oh, it is?
bottle
Okay.
and the shot bottle. So it's basically around the proportions. So this is our proprietary signature bottle. It has our logo in the bottom. And we are very bullish on that as well, which is why we
Something very beautiful about this bottle.
Yeah, man, it's really a nice bottle. I like how it turned out. In the beginning, I was
And these, like
Yeah.
these little glass shots, there's just something so nice about this. You know?
It feels real premium.
I have a little collection going on my shelf in my home office.
Sweet.
They're just like, I don't know, they're just very nice
Yeah.
little bottles.
I mean, can you believe it's $2.99 or $3.99 on the shelf,
Yeah.
depending on the retailer,
Mm-hmm.
for that high quality of a product? I mean, Charlie, that's a $10 shot at most or no, that's a $6 shot at most places, right? If you go to a juice bar that's making organic shots in
Right.
glass, how much is a shot? You know better than I do, probably.
It depends. You know, shots come in different sizes: 2 ounces, 4 ounces. Yeah, I'd say $4 to $6.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So to get this on a grocery store shelf in the $2.99 to $3.99 range is
Right.
pretty sweet.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the bottle's patented. We're bullish on that because we're building an iconic brand here. I mean, we want to be the health beverage and basically the non-poisonous option on the shelf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Selling wholesale. I know there's listeners that have considered it or are considering it, and lots of them ask me questions about it. Can you just describe the economics in wholesale beverage? Like, what kind of margin you need to distributor, from distributor to retail, etc.
Dude, in my experience, you cannot build a wholesale business that's sustainable with a plant and distribution and a team and stability without doing $5 million a year.
So
If you can't do $5 million a year in some quick amount of time, you're really gonna have a
Right.
tough time.
right, and why is that?
Because you have to get some unit economics. You have to be able to have a bottling line that can get some units out to get the price down, to get it to be financially viable for the distributor and the retailer. Your customer is the distributor, your secondary customer is the retailer, and then you have the consumer. So you have to satisfy all three parties. The consumer you have to satisfy the most,
Right.
but the distributor
Yeah.
and the retailer you have to satisfy as well.
So you basically have to figure out the price of the consumer. And
Yeah.
then work backwards, right?
Exactly. So
So-
to do that, you know, I mean, this is, call it $3.99. 40 points goes to the retailer.
So
You got a calculator?
yeah.
3.99 times 0.4
So yeah, so that's $1.59
times 0.75. 25% goes to the distributor.
So distributor gets 25% on like hundreds or thousands of locations they distribute to, right?
Hundreds. Not very few of them do
Okay,
thousands.
so they're more regional.
Yeah.
So times 0.75. So now you're at $1.20. $1.20.
Yeah. Who can make a glass bottled shot for
Yeah,
$1.20?
that's insane.
You got to do $5 million a year minimum.
Because you need a factory that can make stuff
Quickly.
cheap enough and quick enough, low enough labor
Yeah.
to get that $1.20 to the distributor.
Somewhat automated,
Mm-hmm.
efficient. Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily call it cheap enough, but I would say efficient enough.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Like, I mean, you've seen the back of our plant. Everything is high end, but what we've done is we've tried to automate the heavy lifting while still, well, actually keeping quality higher than if you were doing it manually.
My girlfriend's here. I'm
Yeah.
just waving at her
Yeah.
so she knows.
So if you ask what do I say? I mean, it's going to be a tough road. Perhaps the local market's easier. And it's not because I don't want competition. It's because I went through nights where I couldn't sleep, like when was
You're trying to crush
crying
everyone's
myself
dreams, man.
to go to sleep at night. I didn't finish the part you asked me earlier about, we were talking about Costa Rica and all this. I mean,
Yeah.
there were many nights where I went to bed and I asked Lindsay and talked to Lindsay. I'm like, hey, why are we even doing this? Like, this is killing me. This is really hard. We made no money for 70 months straight. I had to live off selling property, and I lived in Costa Rica for $2,200 a month for 2 years out of the 70 months. So like, it's very difficult. So I'm not saying that to reduce competition. I'm saying it because it's truthful.
Mm-hmm.
Like, perhaps having multiple retail location juice bars is easier to grow a $5 million company.
I mean, the nice thing about being small, you know, you can have one retail juice bar location, and at the end of the year, profit $50K to $100K, $150K, something like that. You know, if it's doing well,
Right.
they can open 2 or 3, and now you're making pretty good money for, like, you know, a lifestyle business.
Right.
And you don't have the pressure of needing to sell through thousands of locations and get the cost down to $1.20. I mean, that's really hard, you know?
Right.
And I think that's why we've seen.
Well, then we got to make money on that. So you take that
Oh,
and
yeah,
times
yeah,
it by
yeah.
0.6. So
Right,
really,
right.
we gotta make this.
Yeah,
for
so
80
so it's
cents.
$1.20 to the distributor.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
then
Say if your target's 40% margin, times that by 0.6.
right,
Gotta make
so
this for
72
cents.
cents.
Yeah.
Bottle,
How much is the glass
label,
bottle?
cap,
All the liquid inside,
the
certified
food
organic.
cost of the stuff in it.
Yeah,
Yeah, the labor. That's insane.
that's right. That's why we lost money for 70 months.
All right, so why did you lose money for 70 months and now you're making money?
Because the volume is up.
Just the volume, right? So you finally reached that kind of economic threshold where the factory is actually making you enough to make money now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
So
it's
so
like penny profit.
so
on
that's
each unit.
basically the challenge is having enough money to get to the point where you're doing 5 million in
Yeah.
revenue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that totally makes sense. I think it's a good way to break it down.
If you have the stomach for that and the money to do it, go for it. It probably will take you 3 or 4 years or 5 years.
All right, so let's start wrapping this up. What would you like people to know about your company, Solti?
Well, I'd like them to try it and then feel it.
Mhm.
And if they can feel it, and then I think that speaks louder than words. So, if I'm ever feeling like I'm having a tough day, I just go look on Instagram stories and see what people are saying about how our product makes them feel.
Mhm.
And that's pretty amazing because it brings them a lot of health and vitality that they didn't know they had inside of them. Because we all have the health and vitality inside of us. We just have to get back to nature. So what do I want people to know about the brand? Hopefully we can get it in a store near you and you can try it and then you can feel it.
Cool.
Yeah.
How do people follow you guys on social media?
Yeah. Drink Solti is the Instagram handle, and Drink Solti is the Facebook handle. Solti.com is our website. We have direct to consumer in a compostable package that lasts for 48 hours.
I saw that.
No styrofoam.
Do you want to bring that in here real quick? That might be
Yeah.
fun to look at.
Yeah.
All right, so this is your package that you shipped when people order on the website, right?
Yeah. So this is our new package. It's made out of post-consumer recycled cardboard. It's all craft brown, soy inks. This is a compostable inner Climacell. Has no foam even inside. This is not foam. It's plant-based. This keeps cold for 48 hours. We send it with reusable ice packs, which you can then put in your freezer and reuse again. They're clearly marked. So this is a plastic-free, direct-to-your-door package that we're super stoked on because it took us a while to engineer this.
Nice.
Yeah.
First time I've ever seen that.
Yeah. And we were missing that because, we did a styrofoam for a while because it was the only solution. Because not only do we have to keep it cold, it can't break.
Yeah,
it's glass.
Sure.
So it's like the hardest thing to ship.
That's true. That's glass too. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
That's
and
like-
most juice companies, if they're doing e-commerce, it's
plastic.
Yeah, so it doesn't have a breakage issue.
I remember you purchased a Juicero when it came out. Remember?
Yeah, I did.
And then you ordered the packets.
Yeah,
And it came with like so much packaging.
so much packaging.
At that point, why not just buy a bottle of juice, right?
Yeah, seriously,
Yeah.
seriously.
And it's not even as fresh as like real juice.
All
would be.
these local juice bars in Solti could have used some of that VC money.
Yeah. No,
That would have been nice.
120 mil.
That would have been nice. That would have funded like 250 juice bars, like 500 grand each.
You can do a lot with 100 mil. I mean, we're baffled as good nature looking at that.
Yeah.
Because like our cost in developing a machine, it's like maybe $1 million, 1.5. If you factor in all the engineering time and
Mm-hmm.
prototyping and everything, it's like, how did they burn 120 mil?
Unreal.
That's a
Irresponsible.
perfect example of when you have too much investor cash.
Yeah,
you
easy
just,
come, easy go, man.
Yeah.
If easy come and easy go in all things in
I
life.
feel like if they raised 10 million, maybe they would have done a better job.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Ryan, thanks a lot. It's been fun.
Really fun. Thanks,
Um,
Charlie.
It's always fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
And catch you on the flip side.
All right. Sounds good. Good
Peace.
seeing you.
You too.
All right.